5 minutes ago, something inside your mind may have started changing without you fully realizing it yet. Not because of magic, not because of coincidence, but because certain moments in life interrupt the normal emotional patterns people live inside every single day. And once that interruption happens, the mind begins paying attention differently. Right now, millions of people across the world are noticing repeating numbers: 111, 222, 444, 555. Many people dismiss these moments immediately. Others become emotionally attached to them. But very few people truly understand why the human brain reacts so strongly when unusual patterns suddenly appear during emotionally difficult periods of life. There is a reason moments like this feel strangely personal. There is a reason emotionally exhausted people become more aware of symbolic signs during stressful periods. And there is a reason why dates like May 25th begin emotionally standing out in the minds of certain people while most others continue scrolling through life without noticing anything at all. The human brain is constantly searching for meaning. Neuroscientists have studied this for years. The mind is designed to recognize patterns because human survival has always depended on detecting changes, unusual signals, and emotional threats in the environment. Long before modern civilization existed, pattern recognition helped humans survive danger. The brain became trained to notice repetition because repetition often meant something important was happening. That instinct still exists today. But in modern life, the danger is no longer always physical. Now the exhaustion is emotional. Mental pressure, emotional confusion, constant stress, silent anxiety. People wake up tired. They scroll endlessly. They distract themselves constantly. But deep inside, many feel disconnected from themselves and from the life they truly want to live. And during those emotionally heavy moments, the mind becomes far more sensitive, positive to unusual patterns and symbolic experiences. That is why repeating numbers emotionally affect people more during periods of uncertainty, heartbreak, stress, loneliness, or emotional exhaustion. The brain starts searching for emotional direction, for reassurance, for meaning, for something that feels bigger than the endless repetition of ordinary life. And that is where moments like 555 become psychologically powerful, not because the number itself contains magical power, but because the moment interrupts the emotional autopilot people have been trapped inside for months, sometimes years. Most people live the same emotional day repeatedly, the same worries, the same fears, the same routines, the same emotional reactions, the same internal pressure, day after day after day. Eventually the mind becomes numb. People stop listening to themselves. They stop questioning where their life is heading. They become emotionally trapped inside routines they no longer even consciously notice anymore. Then suddenly something unusual appears, a repeated number, a strange emotional feeling, a date that emotionally stands out, a moment that forces the brain to pause. And during that pause, awareness begins waking up again. That is why some people feel deeply emotional when they notice moments connected to 555. The interruption creates reflection, and reflection creates awareness. Most people never realize how powerful awareness truly is. Awareness changes behavior. Behavior changes habits. Habits slowly shape identity, and identity slowly changes the direction of an entire life. That is why some moments become turning points people remember forever, not because the universe magically changed overnight, but because the person finally became emotionally honest with themselves during that moment. And there is something else most people never talk about. Emotionally charged dates affect the mind differently. Psychologists understand that man memory becomes stronger when emotion and timing become connected together. The brain assigns importance to emotionally intense moments. That is why certain dates stay in people's memories for years. The emotional meaning attached to the moment becomes stronger than the moment itself. So when people see 25 May, connected to emotional language, repeating numbers, spiritual discussion, or transformation messages, the brain naturally becomes more alert. Curiosity increases, attention increases, emotional focus increases, and suddenly people begin asking deeper questions about themselves and their lives. Some people ignore those moments immediately. Others never stop thinking about them afterward. That is why this video matters, because tonight is not really about numbers, it is not really about a portal, and it is not really about superstition. This video is about understanding why the human mind becomes desperate for emotional change after carrying invisible emotional why. Ghastly for too long. This video is about understanding why emotionally exhausted people become more sensitive to symbolic moments. This video is about understanding why awareness becomes dangerous to the old version of yourself. And most importantly, this video is about understanding why some people completely change after moments like this, while others continue living the exact same emotional cycle for years. By the end of this video, you will understand the psychology behind repeating numbers and emotionally charged moments. You will understand why the brain reacts so strongly during uncertain periods of life. You will understand why people become emotionally attached to signs, and you will understand the deeper reasons certain moments feel like wake-up calls internally. There is a reason some people found this message tonight, and there is a reason some people will ignore it completely. One group will continue emotionally surviving. The other group may finally begin changing internally. Stay until the end, because the deeper truth behind 555 is far more psychological, emotional, and life-changing than most people realize. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy deep psychological, spiritual, and life-changing conversations like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and become part of this journey with us. And now, let us talk about why the human mind becomes obsessed with signs in the first place. The human mind has always been obsessed with signs, patterns, and unusual moments. This behavior did not suddenly appear because of social media or spiritual videos. It has existed deep inside human psychology for thousands of years. The brain constantly scans the world searching for meaning, connections, warnings, and emotional certainty. Even during sleep, the subconscious mind continues processing emotional information without people realizing it. Scientists who study human behavior understand something very important about the brain. The M. In does not enjoy uncertainty. Uncertainty creates emotional discomfort. It creates stress inside the nervous system. That is why people naturally search for signals that help them feel emotionally safe again. Repeating numbers interrupt ordinary attention because repetition forces the brain to pause. Most people move through life mentally distracted. Their thoughts are automatic, their routines are automatic, their emotional reactions are automatic. But the moment something unusual appears repeatedly, attention suddenly becomes stronger. That is why numbers like 55 emotionally affect people more than random ordinary moments. The brain notices interruption, and interruption creates awareness. But there is another reason these moments feel emotionally powerful during stressful periods of life. Emotional exhaustion changes perception. When people feel mentally overwhelmed, emotionally lost, disconnected, anxious, lonely, or uncertain about their future, the mind becomes far more sensitive to symbolic experiences. People begin searching for reassurance, not because they are weak, but because emotional pressure creates an internal need for direction. Many people secretly carry invisible emotional weight every day. They smile publicly while privately feeling exhausted inside. They continue working, continue scrolling, continue distracting themselves, but deep down they feel disconnected from peace, purpose, and emotional clarity. That is why so many people become emotionally attached to signs during difficult periods of life. The truth is, most people are not truly searching for numbers. They are searching for hope, for emotional certainty, for reassurance that change is still possible, for a reason to believe life can become different from the emotional cycle they currently live inside. And social media has intensified this emotional attachment dramatically. Every day, millions of videos, posts, and spiritual messages repeat emotional phrases connected to numbers like 111, 222, 444, and 555. The human brain absorbs repetition very quickly. The more people repeatedly see emotional messages connected to specific numbers, the stronger the psychological association becomes. Eventually, the number itself starts triggering emotional reactions automatically. The brain connects the symbol with possibility, and belief begins influencing emotional energy. This matters more than most people realize, because belief changes behavior. When people believe change is possible, they think differently, act differently, they notice opportunities differently. They begin emotionally opening themselves to new possibilities instead of remaining trapped inside hopelessness. That is why belief can quietly reshape a person's entire life over time. But the problem is that many people remain emotionally stuck for years without fully understanding why. Life becomes repetitive, emotionally long before people consciously notice it happening. The stress, the same fears, the same emotional reactions, the same disappointments, the same habits repeated every day. The subconscious mind loves familiarity, even when familiarity becomes painful. Human beings often continue repeating emotional patterns simply because those patterns feel known and predictable. The brain becomes attached to emotional routines. Even suffering can become psychologically comfortable when repeated long enough. That is why so many people remain trapped inside lives they secretly no longer enjoy. Not because they truly want to stay there, but because the subconscious mind fears uncertainty more than emotional repetition. People wake up tired. They move through routines automatically. They stop questioning their emotional state. They stop questioning their direction. They slowly disconnect from themselves without realizing it. And emotional survival mode begins controlling life. When the nervous system remains stressed for too long, motivation weakens, clarity weakens, emotional energy weakens. People begin focusing only on surviving the day instead of consciously building the future they truly want. That silent emotional exhaustion is becoming more common everywhere. Many people secretly feel disconnected from purpose. They continue functioning externally while internally feeling emotionally empty. And during those moments, unusual emotional experiences begin affecting the mind much more deeply. That is why moments connected to 555 can feel strangely personal to certain people. The interruption creates emotional reflection, and reflection creates awareness. The number 555 has become emotionally associated with change because repetition psychologically signals importance to the human brain. Humans emotionally react to unusual patterns because unusual patterns interrupt emotional autopilot. The interruption feels powerful internally, and that internal feeling becomes emotionally memorable, but transformation rarely begins dramatically. Most life changes begin quietly inside the mind first. Before behavior changes externally, awareness changes internally. Before people create a different life, they first become emotionally tired of their current one. That moment matters deeply, because many people desperately want change while simultaneously fearing it. The human brain naturally resists uncertainty. Even painful routines can feel safer than unfamiliar possibilities. People fear losing control. They fear failure. They fear judgment. They fear leaving familiar, emotional pain behind, because familiar pain at least feels predictable. That is why emotional breakthroughs often happen during moments of exhaustion. The mind eventually becomes tired of carrying the same invisible emotional weight repeatedly. The emotional suffering becomes impossible to ignore anymore, and suddenly awareness becomes stronger than fear. That is when change begins quietly. But many people still ignore those moments completely because modern life constantly distracts attention away from internal reflection. Phones never stop buzzing. Notifications never stop appearing. Endless scrolling keeps the brain overloaded with stimulation every hour of the day. Silence has become uncomfortable for many people. Reflection has become rare. People distract themselves constantly because distraction temporarily hides emotional discomfort. But hidden emotions never truly disappear. They quietly remain inside the nervous system, influencing thoughts, behaviors, habits, and emotional reactions every single day. Awareness requires honesty, and honesty requires silence. That is why some people dismiss emotional moments immediately, while others completely change after them. The difference is emotional readiness. Some people are still running from themselves internally. Others finally become tired of emotionally surviving. Transformation often begins very quietly, not with dramatic miracles, not with instant perfection, but with a simple internal realization that the current emotional pattern can no longer continue. That is why many people describe moments like this as wake-up calls, not because a number magically changed reality, but because the person finally paused long enough to listen to themselves honestly again. And symbolically, that is what people mean when they say God opened the 555 portal. The portal is emotional, psychological, internal. It represents the moment a person begins mentally leaving behind older emotional versions of themselves. Fear, negativity, self-doubt, emotional attachment, hopeless thinking, the belief that nothing can ever change. Because once a person truly believes change is possible, decisions slowly begin changing too. Different decisions create different habits. Different habits slowly reshape identity, and identity slowly reshapes reality over time. That process does not happen overnight, but it does begin with awareness, and awareness begins the moment the mind finally becomes tired of carrying the same emotional pain in silence every single day. 25th May will pass. The clock will continue moving. 5:55 will disappear like every other moment before it. Tomorrow the world will wake up again. People will return to their routines. Notifications will continue. Stress will continue. Noise will continue. Most people will continue living emotionally distracted without ever stopping long enough to ask themselves why they truly feel the way they do inside. And that is the deeper truth most people never fully understand. The power was never the number itself. The power was never hidden inside 555. The power was always the awareness created during the moment, because awareness changes people. The moment a person becomes aware of their emotional patterns, life slowly begins shifting internally. Thoughts begin changing, decisions begin changing, energy begins changing, and over time, behavior begins changing too. That is how transformation actually happens. Not instantly, not magically, but quietly. Awareness changes behavior. Behavior shapes habits. Habits slowly shape identity, and identity slowly shapes reality. Most people spend years emotionally surviving instead of consciously living. They carry invisible emotional weight every single day without realizing how deeply it affects their decisions, relationships, motivation, confidence, and future. Some people continue carrying that emotional weight forever. Others eventually reach a moment where the mind simply becomes tired of suffering the same way. That moment changes everything, and maybe that is why this message found certain people tonight. Not because life suddenly became perfect, not because the future magically changed overnight, but because something inside finally paused long enough to listen honestly. Some people will watch this video and forget it tomorrow morning. Others may remember this as the moment they finally became emotionally honest with themselves for the first time in a very long time. Because sometimes the greatest transformation in life begins the moment your mind finally becomes tired of carrying the same invisible emotional weight every single day. If this message spoke to you in any way, take this moment seriously. Not the number, not the date, but the awareness you felt while listening. And if you are ready to begin changing internally, comment below. 555 I choose change. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more deep psychological and spiritual conversations that help you reconnect with yourself and your future. And remember, the moment awareness begins, the old version of you slowly begins disappearing.